This will do it. Hello. Let me sit. There we go. This is a little bit better. So, all of you in the back who would like to join us, please do. We would appreciate it. My name is Joe Kramer. I'm the president of our fine society. There's been a lot going on over the last year, as you all may have heard some rumors. So the good news is, at our parish meeting, which is in 2 weeks, we'll be discussing our interim minister search. Thank you. Half my mind is outside, so one thing I want to say is thank you for everyone for being inside here for the next hour or so as we do this, because the budget is very important. But so at our next meeting, which will be at the time that our official parish meeting, we'll be doing votes and things like that. We'll be talking about our new, hopefully interim minister, because the search task force has been hard at work late at night, because right now is the crunch time. They got a couple of names. They've been doing interviews. This coming week, on Tuesday, the board is going to be getting together to listen to the recommendations, and then the board will be getting together again on Wednesday night to make a final decision. And we put that into the hat, tell people who we want, and then hopefully by the following week or so, we should know. By the 11th, we should know who has agreed to join us. So it has been interesting. We also have a music director search that we'll be talking about at the parish meeting. We're also forming, if anyone's interested, an interim minister task force that is going to be assisting the interim minister through the course of discernment, deciding how and what we want to do as a congregation. And that task force, the real important thing there is going to be to help everyone reach out and to gather in everyone's opinions and thoughts and feedback and try to synthesize that as we start to think about who is going to be our next called minister. So if anyone's interested in the interim minister's task force, some transition task force, thank you, interim minister transition task force, please feel free to email me at fuspres@gmail.com. A couple of people already have, and we're taking the names in. We want a really nice, diverse group for that, if possible. So we would appreciate that. So today's Finance Forum is going to be fascinating. Adam Simcock is going to be up after TK to talk about the agenda review, so we'll just save that as a surprise if you haven't looked at the agenda yet as to what's going to be coming up. I'm going to be turning things over to TK, so please. Thank you.
Our opening reading comes from Thich Nhat Hanh's Being Peace. When you look at the night sky, you might see a very beautiful star and smile at it. But a scientist may tell you that the star is no longer there, that it was extinct 10 million years ago. So our perception is not correct. When we see a very beautiful sunset, it was already behind the mountain 8 minutes ago. It takes 8 minutes for the sunshine to reach our planet. The hard fact is that we never see the sun in the present, we only see the sun in the past. Suppose while walking in the twilight, you see a snake and you scream. But when you shine your flashlight on it, it turns out to be a rope. This is an error of perception. During our daily lives, we have many misperceptions. If I don't understand you, I may be angry at you all of the time. We are not capable of understanding each other, and that is the main source of human suffering. A man was rowing his boat upstream on a very misty morning. Suddenly, he saw another boat coming downstream, not trying to avoid him. It was coming straight at him. He shouted, "Be careful, be careful!" But the boat came right into him, and his boat was almost sunk. The man became very angry and began to shout at the other person to give him a piece of his mind. But when he looked closely, he saw that there was no one in the other boat. It turned out that the boat had just gotten loose and went downstream. All his anger vanished, and he laughed and he laughed. If our perceptions are not correct, they may give us a lot of bad feelings. Buddhism, and I think Unitarian Universalism, teaches us how to look at things deeply in order to understand their own true nature, so that we will not be misled into suffering and bad feelings. Thanks.
Thank you, TK. I'm the shortest person that's, I think, going to be talking today. Hi, my name is Adam Simcock. I started as the chair of the Finance Committee this year, which has been a bit of a breath of fresh air after teaching religious education to kindergartners and first graders, but comes with its own challenges as we try and ensure fiscal responsibility while meeting the needs of the community. So I'm going to review the agenda, again, about the easiest job, I think, today. But I'm also up here to give you a face to the name or a name to the face. In case you have any questions for the Finance Committee, please feel free to contact me or grab me any Sunday morning, and I'll do my best to answer. So today, we're going to start by reviewing our third quarter year-to-date financials, where we stand today, some notes about the third quarter. And then Monica Nolan and Kelly Crocker will review some of the guiding principles and concerns related to the 2018-2019 budget to provide context around some of the financial decisions that we have to make in creating a balanced budget and meeting our mission. This will be followed by the actual proposed 2018-2019 budget. We hear an update from the, I have to check this because this may have changed. Yes? Further down, yeah. Is that better? Okay. So we'll hear an update on the annual campaign, which is critical to our ongoing operations and a core part of our operating budget. An update on the foundation from Connie Beam, and presentation of a policy proposal around restricted donations that the board is considering. Be followed by feedback from anybody who would like to ask questions or provide their thoughts, and a closing reading by Reverend Kelly Crocker.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? Hold on. Wait for it. Now you can hear me. How is everybody? Is it warm in here, or is it just me? Now that it's quieted down, does anyone mind if we open those doors up? Great. Thanks, Leslie. Too loud for people? I wonder if could it be my phone? How's this? All right. Okay. Here we are. All righty. Well, I'm going to echo Joe's sentiment. Really grateful that you all are here on such a beautiful day. We are going to strive to get out of here by 2 o'clock, but of course, as always, we're really excited to carve out some time at the end to hear feedback from all of you on priorities, questions, just your thoughts in general about the financial state of FUS, and in particular, the budget for 18-19 that is proposed. But before we dig in, of course, as always, we want to thank the Finance Committee. You all have met Adam Simcock, obviously, our chairperson. March Schweitzer couldn't be with us today, but she is also an active member and the board rep. Jennifer Conroy, Alyssa Ryan-Joy, and Chuck Evanson are the other 3 members. So round of applause for them. Chuck, I know you're here. And you could be one of them. I know that we're looking for at least one member to serve on the Finance Committee next year. So if you're interested, please do let Rob Savage know. Without further ado, let's dig into our current financials. And by current financials, I mean the financials as of the end of the third quarter, which concluded on March 31st, 2018. Quick reminder that we have 3 accounts or funds. Those are the Capital Fund, Designated and Restricted Fund, and the Operating Fund. Got to use this nifty little apparatus. So, at the end of the third quarter, looking at cash on hand, we had $1.97 million. If we look back 1 year ago, we had $275,000. So that is a positive change of $1.69 million. Can anyone guess why we had that significant increase? Fundraising for the Capital Fund, you got it. All right, so honing in on the operating fund, the first of the 3 accounts, you can see 2 columns, one which is through the end of the third quarter and the other is last year. So income year to date was $1.36 million, which is approximately $31,000 more than last year at this time, which is great. Expenses were $1.44 million, which is also $30K more than last year. So last year we had a negative net income of $75,000 at the end of the third quarter, and this year we again have nearly an identical amount, a negative $75K. That is not unusual, so let me just bring the room back down and tranquil. So the first and the third quarters are not our money-making quarters. The second and the fourth are. So we do project deficits in those 2 quarters. We do rebound typically in the fourth quarter. You might recall the end of the fourth quarter, we concluded with a small deficit of about $10K. Oh, I don't get to use that. I'm going to bring us a little bit closer, and let's take a look at any line in the operating budget that was deviating $10K or more from the budget. So you can see in terms of income that was higher than expected, this is good, we had unpledged contributions. We had budgeted $48,000, and in actual income we saw $60,000, so a positive variance of $12K. And that was in thanks to $21K donation from the Women's Alliance, $7,000 for the hearing loop, $5,000 for an energy assessment, and $27,000 worth of other donations. Then looking at the income, there are 3 different areas where income was lower than expected or budgeted. The first is parking income. You can see we budgeted $61K year to date. Actual income is $38K, so a negative variance of $23,000. I spoke about this at the last budget, or the last parish meeting we had. We had more parkers prepay for their whole year in June of 2017, so before the fiscal year began, instead of paying monthly as they had historically. So we're assuming the same will occur again in June of 2018, and hopefully we'll see this budget line even out. Likewise, for the fundraising event income line, we had budgeted year-to-date $53,000, actually saw $30K thanks to the gala, so a negative variance of $23K. I don't have any answers on how much we've made for cabaret yet. Huge thanks to everyone that did attend. We're optimistic that we might have made up that $20,000 difference. And then last but not least, not surprisingly, income lower than expected is pledge payments. So budgeted year to date was $924K, actual income $855,000, so a negative variance of $70K approximately. Last year at this time, we were about $50K under budget in terms of pledges. And as I mentioned, we were $11K, we ended the year with an $11K deficit. It's hard to budget for pledge income. We don't always know what you all are going to do, when you're going to pay or when you're not going to pay. So you can see, for example, one year we might see $342K in pledge payments in the third quarter, and the next we'll see $256K. So there's huge fluctuation between years and those payments. All that said, we're actively encouraging members and affiliates to pay their pledges, and to do so obviously before June 30th. Now let's shift gears and look at expenses. There are a couple, there's no areas where our expenses were higher than we anticipated. That's great news. But there are a couple of lines where expenses were lower than expected, which is also relatively good news. One of those areas is pension. We budgeted $56K. Actual expenses were $37K, so we had a savings of about $19,000. New staff member pension payments don't begin until they've completed 1 full year of employment, and with new employees, the pension payments were less than we had initially anticipated. In program expenses, pretty much across the board, we spent $1 to $3K less than budgeted. So we had budgeted $117K, and we'd only spent about $100K. Okay. Next, account 2. Let's look at the designated and restricted fund. We began the fiscal year with $173,000 in that account. Year to date in income, we've seen $66K. We've transferred $71K to the operating fund or to the capital fund. Those were approved transfers. In terms of expenses, we've spent $43,000 directly from that account. And so at the end of third quarter, we have $124K. You can see some of the funds that have had activity year to date. They range in fund balance from about $370 to $52,000. You can see that the top 3 funds are currently the Music Fund, the Art Fair Fund, and the Nelson Leonardi Fund. Last but not least, the Capital Fund, my favorite. So the account balance as of March 31st was nearly $1.9 million. Year-to-date actuals, in terms of income, we've seen $1.36 million. Last year, which was approximately $1.32 million more than last year. Expenses year-to-date are at $84K, which is about $10K less than we had budgeted to spend. And therefore, we have a positive net income of $1.28 million. So just a couple of end-of-year reflections on the budget and actual. If you haven't paid your pledge yet, please do so. There's still time to catch up, and we have member volunteers and staff that will be kindly reminding all of you to do so. And also, if you're contemplating an unpledged donation, this is a really great quarter to do that, fourth quarter. So highly encourage unpledged donations. All right, I get to have a drink of water soon. So before we get into details about the budget, we wanted to make sure to catch you up on our priorities for the next fiscal year. Kelly and I are going to do that. Kelly, where are you, my friend? There she is. Kelly's going to start by talking about the vision of ministry, and then I'll talk or speak to the visions of organizational health. I can, for you. I'm good.
All right. So we have 3 visions of ministry. I hope you all got this handout on the way in, because underneath each vision of ministry, Monica has listed the outcomes. And you will see that vision number 2 has 11. So it is an ambitious plan for the coming year. I just wanted to highlight a couple, since this is the budget forum. We wanted to highlight those that have budgetary impact for the coming year. Most of these, the budget for these new items will be within our current programming, or will be how we're using staff time, so it is within the personnel line. But there are a couple of things to point out. This first one, within us, enhance opportunities for spiritual, intellectual, and personal growth. And in that outcome of implementing new and diverse ways of delivering religious education content, one of the things that we will be examining that could have a small budgetary impact is creating an online new UU course and what that could look like. So typically our new UU has been either 3 Thursdays or 3 Sundays in a row. And in the past 2 years, we have started doing an all-day Saturday. So people will come from 9 to 3, their kids are in childcare, we have lunch together, and we kind of wondered who would want to come and spend a whole day doing new UU. That has become our most popular session, and when we just did our last one in April, we had 27 people register for that one, and that's a huge number for our new UU courses. So we're wondering if, continuing in that vein, if there's a way to do an online version. Our second vision, among us nurture members in all stages of life and commit to build deeper connections. The outcome of making it easier to get involved here in the congregation. And one of the things, again, with budgetary implication is that we are thinking of once again creating an everything guide to FUS. So this is the book that has the adult education classes in it. It has the ministry teams. It has the choir rehearsals. It has a page about lay ministry. So all of the ways in which you can get involved would be listed in there with who you would contact. So it would be a really handy guide to just, here you go, here is everything in one place. And then that third one, beyond us, embody our UU principles in the larger community as we engage in outreach, service, advocacy, and activism. That's a great one, and I have 2 of them up there. I think one, because I just really liked it. 2 of the outcomes are up there, and under both of them, partnership and advocacy, and also opportunities to discuss the many privileges that we have. There are goals in this strategic plan about bringing in speakers and bringing in programs, both for the adult community and also in our youth programming. And so there may be budgetary implications for honoraria to bring in speakers to do those programs. So please take a look at this bigger sheet so that you see all of the outcomes. And if you have any questions about that, I'll be around.
Okay, on to how we plan to improve FUS's organizational health in 1819. So first, we plan to facilitate the successful transition of our senior minister and music director. I'll talk more about this later, but this has impacts on our overall compensation levels. We will implement the landmark capital projects approved during the last capital campaign. Many of you might have seen in the red floors this weekend that we've announced that construction will begin. So much of the landmark will be shut down for the next 5 or 6 months. So we're excited to be moving forward with those renovations, and we're still budgeting $2.1 million as we've previously discussed at parish meetings. We will continue to improve the FUS work environment so that all staff feel supported, honored, and confident in their ability to fulfill their positions. So in addition to a modest addition of a staff appreciation line in the operating budget, we're really planning to continue to discuss staff salaries and the denomination's UUA compensation guidelines throughout 2018-2019. That's a conversation that began at the last parish meeting, and it's one that I would anticipate that will continue for hopefully many years to come. Unfortunately, this year we didn't have sufficient income to make those systemic salary changes, but pledge generously, and I think it increases the odds that we'll be able to move in that direction in the coming years. We will improve the consistency, efficiency, and efficacy of internal and external marketing and communications. One of the most significant programmatic increases we see is within the communications department, with an 8% increase over last year's budget. I think it's something like $1,500, but programmatically that can be a lot. And then finally, I believe we will revisit our financial opportunities and responsibilities to ensure they allow our mission to flourish today and in many years to come. We'll be thinking a great deal about what it means to have long-term fiscal sustainability. We've taken great strides in these last couple of months and with this budget that I'm about to present. But please do join us at next year's financial forums to hear more about what we've done over the coming 8 months. All right. Okay, shifting gears again. Before I dig into the numbers, I'm going to tell you a little bit about where we started. I'm going to kind of walk you through the story of creating this budget. So the first draft of the 18-19 operating budget had approximately a $125K year-end projected deficit. That sounds scary, and believe me, it was scary for me when I saw the numbers. So let me explain to you what the contributing factors was, and I think we'll all understand what we were contending with. The first was we were required to project expenses for 3 new staff members who we assumed would be taking full benefits. That has a price tag of about $107,000. So some of our staff that's retiring wasn't taking advantage of health and dental insurance, and so we needed to work that into the budget for these new staff members that would be joining us. We also wanted to be sure to create a more realistic projection for pledge income this year. So we knew that we wanted to ensure that pledge income was closely tied to 2 years worth of actual income. So that resulted in $25K less in projected income. We also knew that we wouldn't have the benefit of an additional fundraiser. Not planning on a gala this next year, so there's $35,000 less in income. And then finally, we knew, as I mentioned before, as we think about this long-term fiscal sustainability, we knew that we wanted to make less transfers from the designated fund into the operating fund. So at least $13,000 was the goal. So those 4 contributing factors contributed to that $125K year-end projected deficit. So we got together. This is usually a very collaborative process. This year was even more collaborative. So the executive team considered a wide range of areas where we could increase income and decrease expenses. There was brainstorming. Nothing was off the table. But ultimately, those things ranged. You can see a list here from increasing parking fees to cutting staff benefits. But ultimately, we decided to go with 4 what we thought were viable solutions. The first was indeed to increase parking fees by 9%. This was a recommendation of the Finance Committee and seemed well-timed as many of Madison's area parking lots are increasing their fees. To our knowledge, we're still below all of those, but we're still able to raise those fees by 9% and experience that additional income. We did decide, unfortunately, to offer no staff-wide UUA salary bumps, so no cost of living increases either. So the last 2 years, at least, we had done 2% cost of living increases, and that did not seem viable this year. Third, we decided to merge the Director of Adult Spiritual Programs, which is Janet Swanson's role, and the Membership Engagement Coordinator position, which is Jean Sears' role, when Jean retires in August of 2018. So the idea was both positions would become 50% essentially, and they would merge into one super role, which Janet Swanson has luckily accepted. Fourth, we decided to return 1 staff member to a part-time status. So our fundraising project coordinator was part-time until the capital campaign began and has been part-time historically. We returned that position to that part-time status, or will be as of July 1st. So making those 4 modifications resulted in a balanced budget. So what we understand, no illusions here. We get that any cut, especially that impacts staff, has an effect on morale, and we want to ensure that staff understands how appreciative we are for their contributions. And I think this journey isn't over. As we talk about fiscal sustainability, part of that is maintaining and retaining the wonderful talent that you have. So we'll continue to do what we can in order to maintain these wonderful resources that are our staff, that are our support system. So in the meantime, though, we recognize that as a community, we must spend within our means and make prudent financial decisions to ensure that the mission of FUS continues to thrive. All right, so let's talk numbers now. First, we're going to take a look at the 2018-19 proposed operating fund budget. You do have this on the back of your agenda, so feel free to take a look. I'll be looking at the same thing here as you will there. Pledge payments. You can see that we have, as I mentioned, decreased the proposed income line by $25,000. In terms of rentals, a modest increase of $6,000 is proposed. So in addition to the increase for rent, things like the Meeting House Nursery School, parking is increasing 9%. The foundation income, thankfully, is increasing by $5,000. Collections and gifts, we're projecting will increase by $14,000. Part of that is the $7,500 in eviction prevention funds that used to go into a restricted fund account and now will go right into the operating budget. Will still be used in the exact same way, but we're seeing it in that line now. For fundraising, we're projecting $17,000 less in income. As I mentioned, we will not be doing a gala, but we are moving the art fair funds to the operating fund from the restricted fund. So all income and expenses associated with that will occur in the operating budget. Program income, modest decrease of $1,800. Fund transfers, as I mentioned, are decreasing by $22,000. And then finally, other income, a modest increase of $700. So in all, we're projecting $1.9 million in income, which is about $40,000 less than last year. Expenses. Personnel compensation, after taking the measures that I just outlined, is increasing just by just $14,000. That is in part a result of the interim minister. We're offering a new benefit, which is a FICA offset, which upon doing research and looking into this exciting hire, learned was pretty common across the board. So there's a $15K increase, as well as moving expenses, which are standard to offer. Personnel benefits and taxes, you can see, decreased by $30,000. Our mortgage staying exactly the same, unfortunately. Building decreasing by $7,000. I was pretty shocked when I learned that our insurance premiums would decrease, especially in light of the hail claim that we input last year. But sure enough, $7,000 decrease. Programs, we decreased by about $4,000. Our administrative section is decreasing by $16,000. Part of that is decreasing the software expenses. We're ensuring that it's closer to our 4-year actual average. I do want to point out, though, that our UUA and regional contributions is increasing by 5%. That brings it up to about $8,000. Communications, $1,500 increase. And then last but not least, the fundraising and membership, $2,000 increase. The art fair expense will be visible in this section there. So we have a balanced budget. Total expenses, 1.9, which is, as I mentioned before, $40K less than last year. Let's take a gander at the restricted and designated fund. Is everyone still with me? Good. Estimated fund balance in July of 2018 we're projecting going to be around $124,000. We are very conservatively estimating that we'll see $16,000 worth of income. I mentioned previously, some of you may have caught that in designated and restricted income this year, we've seen $66,000. So again, we're being conservative about that income. The transfers to operating will be $33K, and the projected expenses will be $22,000. So we anticipate ending with a fund balance of $85,000. And last but not least, the capital fund. We've set this up a little bit differently. We are showing a 5-year capital budget, which actually started 2 years ago in July of 2016 and will carry until the end of June of 2021. We did that because that coincides with the way in which people are paying their pledges, as well as the way in which we would be paying for the expenses associated with a capital fund. So you can see capital campaign payments are projected at $2.37 million. That is not a stretch goal. That accurately reflects the income that we're anticipating. Insurance income, $450K, and other income, $144K. So total income of $2.96 million, and then an even $2.96 in expenses to cover things ranging from the administrative expenses for the capital campaign all the way down to the mortgage transfer to ops, which will carry us through for these next 3 years until we're able to pay down that mortgage at the end of June of 2021. Obviously, this also includes things like the prow, the roof, the heating systems, the solar, the atrium furnishings, all those fun things that we promised we would do for the as a result of the capital campaign. In closing, so I've mentioned this many times, and I'll continue to underline it. To an increasing degree, we are thinking about long-term fiscal sustainability. I think everyone would agree that the capital campaign was a really positive step, and decreasing expenses, although challenging, is another positive stride. And though we're close to each year to having a balanced operating budget, looking across the 3 funds, we're not yet sustainable. We do these transfers that I've mentioned. And so I would encourage FUS over these next 5 years to continue to make fiscal sustainability a top financial priority. And I hope that we can continue to explore that issue in spaces like this. I'm going to leave you on a higher note. Annual campaign, good news, if you haven't heard it yet. As of April 22nd, we received 505 pledges totaling $911K. Last year at this time, we had 457 pledges totaling $854K. So that's 57K more than last year and 48 more pledges. So we're just about $288K shy of our $1.2 million goal. And I would be walking on the moon if we could end this campaign before the end of June. So fingers crossed, maybe pledges will come in higher than they have historically. Maybe people are just ambitious in getting it done sooner. In any case, it's good news and I'll take it. All right, you'll see more of me at the end, but now I'm going to hand things off to Connie Beam. She'll talk a little bit about the foundation.
Play the microphone game here. Okay. Well, first of all, I just want to thank Monica and Joe and the Finance Committee and the Board of Trustees. I think that the presentations that we're getting these last few years are outstanding in terms of thinking about what people can understand and presenting it in a way that makes sense. And I really appreciate the whole idea that we're trying to build ourselves into a sustainable organization, a financially sustainable organization that can address salary needs, our social justice commitments in the community, as well as our own spiritual commitments to our members. And it's just great to see this all pulled together in a way that we can understand it clearly and know. And when you understand it, then the financial goals become so much more achievable. So, that having been said, in terms of building a sustainable, financially sustainable congregation is what the FUS Foundation is all about. We manage 18 funds that are close to $3 million in total assets. And every year the foundation makes a contribution or a distribution, if you will, to the FUS operating budget. And you see that line in our budget for next year is going to be right around $135,000. And our goal for our organization is to every year see that contribution go up a little bit every year through investing of our assets and through additional contributions to the foundation. That amount will go up every single year, or at least that's the plan. We've had a few years, as we all have, when the economy wasn't so kind to us. I hope you all picked up a copy of the annual report, the foundation annual report. We, in recent years, have started hiring auditors, so we have wonderful firm, Wagner CPAs, who come in and actually audit our books, and that's something new for us. We've never had that done before. And so the numbers that you see, actually not the numbers on this one, because we're waiting for the audit to happen for this year. We'll audit 2 years at a time. But basically, we've got about, actually, the number down there on FY17 at 2.759 million. That's almost a year old now, so our assets as of March 31st were actually almost $9 million, which is great, and our contribution to FUS from those various funds for fiscal 19 will be $135,400. So, and I would leave you with this, that in years past, FUS has made a good run at putting together a planned giving program. And by that, I mean encouraging people to think of us when they're making their estate plan and including a gift to FUS. The goal of that plan is to give people an opportunity to give us a portion or all of what's left over when they're gone. There's a number of ways you can do that, through trusts, through wills, through charitable gift annuities, all kinds of things. And I'm really pleased. I noticed, my eyes were wide open when Monica was presenting the budget, that there is a slight increase in the one line, and I think I saw a planned giving campaign in there. So we're really excited this fall to put together a group of folks who will be working on getting the word out to people in the congregation that this is something you can do. You can easily include a gift to FUS in your will, your trust, or by beneficiary designation. Easy things to do. You just need our name, our address, and our EIN. You can leave it to FUS, you can leave it to the foundation. It really doesn't matter. It's just money that might be left over, and you want to give it to people you know will put it to work wisely. So, anybody have any questions about what we're up to? All right, well, thank you all very much, and think about including a gift to First Unitarian Society in your state plan if you need more information. Our names are on the flyer. Thanks.
Hi, sound okay? Okay. So I'm Dorrit Bergen. I am one of the Board of Trustees. And I'd like to talk to you this afternoon about a motion to change the policy a bit on restricted donations. So I'm going to read the motion to you that was brought to the board. And then I'd like to share with you some of the discussion that occurred at the board, which resulted in this presentation. Per the Finance Committee's, I don't want to be looking back and forth, so I'm going to get it up on my phone. Per the Finance Committee's recommendation, new donor-restricted funds will not be accepted unless they are equal to 1% or more of the annual budget and would then be subject to board approval. All other gifts are to be given to the operating or capital fund and used at the discretion of the executive director in accordance with the parish-approved budget. Donors are encouraged to participate in the annual budget planning process via the Budget Parish Forum to advocate for the funding of specific initiatives. So, when this came to the board, we asked for clarification on the intent of the policy change. The idea is that if this passes, the FUS will benefit from a more democratic approach to dealing with donations. If a donor wants to fund an initiative that is not in line with organizational priorities, FUS should not accept this donation. In addition, we want to be careful about adding to the administrative workload, as any restriction on a donation requires a certain degree of oversight. I also would like to add that there will be quite a few of the existing restricted donations that will go on existing. So those aren't going away. We also thought people might have some questions about this and wonder why we're doing it. So we actually tabled the motion for now, said let's bring this to the budget forum. So here we are. And very soon, do we want to take questions on this now? Okay, so questions, comments?
Anyone?
Hear, hear. We all want to give our money to support our favorite causes. We all want to do that. But to the degree that we tie the hands of those organizations attempting to execute our specific dreams, it can really be problematic. And I really think this is a great idea. Even at the foundation, you know, we have a fair number of restricted funds, and they are timely and I don't want to say problematic, but they are difficult to manage, and to make sure that we can always draw the line from the 5% annual payout from that gift directly to a program here at FUS can be challenging. So I think this is a good way to get in front of it, and a good way to help people contextualize the broader purpose of our church, and to help us figure out what our priorities are from year to year and support those, and help members advocate for other priorities if they have them.
I just have a question about, for example, the Leonardi Fund, since I personally have some emotion attached to that, and it's, for instance, dedicated to youth programming. I would just love an example of how that is problematic, or if that would not be affected if it was bequeathed upon someone's death and restricted in that way. Would that be affected by this policy?
Great question. So any of the restricted or designated funds that we already have, remember that list of about 15 that have seen activity year to date, things like the music fund or any other fund that's listed there, that will be grandfathered in. So that will remain. To do a new fund? No. No, not unless it exceeded the dollar amount that's in question here, which is about $20,000. But
So if it was at the funeral and you said, please give in my husband's name, sorry.
Sam, not yet.
I would have to, at a time of grief, appeal to the board and say, I'm definitely going to raise $50,000 and therefore I want it to be restricted? Or could I not say in my bulletin I want to do that? Or how would the logistics of that now work?
Yeah, so it could go into the general operating fund. It could go into unpledged donations, but it wouldn't be earmarked for a specific thing that just you and your family thought was important. You could come to the next parish meeting or the next budget forum and advocate for that program, an increase or a decrease of expenses, but not to create a new restricted fund or create a new program that would only honor Sam. You could give, obviously, to the fund that already exists, though.
Okay, so there could be a youth restricted fund that would feel equally good. It wouldn't have to have his name on it. It would just be nice if there were some restricted abilities.
So wait, I'm feeling the need to get very clear on this. So the existing funds, the existing restricted funds, if somebody would want to contribute to something that already exists, would that new contribution fall under this new policy?
It could go in, those funds still exist.
Okay. So if I want to donate to the music fund in 10 years, unless we change it before then, I can do that and there's no requirement that it be 1% or any of that. Okay?
So once upon a time, we had a policy that, and it is the foundation's policy, that we will only consider gifts of $25,000 or more to create a new named fund. And I thought that policy was effective for FUS as well. No? Okay, Michael says no. But that is the foundation's policy, and that doesn't mean that we will accept the contribution. It means that we will consider it, but the gift has to be at least $25,000. I think another point on the restricted funds is that these are not endowed funds. So you can spend every single penny out of those funds. You can spend it right down to zero. So I guess the question is, if the fund is spent down to zero, then does the fund go away? That would be important to articulate in a policy. Number one, can people add contributions to that fund? And number two, if it's spent down to zero, does the fund end? Or does it continue and new contributions could be accepted into that fund?
Question.
So I looked through all the materials that we got. It doesn't seem like we have a list of what the restricted funds are, but there is a great list of all the funds through the foundation, right? And this is so many. There's so many choices that I can't imagine needing any more of these. So I hope we've got enough of these as we need. But do we have, what, just 5 or 6 restricted funds? Probably just music and, those, yes, they flashed up. Thank you.
I have a quick question about the eviction fund, which you said, I believe, is going into the annual budget. But will there continue to be designated offerings and appeals to keep that fund flush? No change, just, okay.
I had also a question about the designated charitable groups that are listed in our orders of service. So if it says on Sunday that your donation today is going to be shared with whatever, that doesn't affect this in any way. Okay. Okay, and the one other thing is that I know in the past various generous individuals have given to our community for example, the organ or specific things like that, again, not affected?
Your particular example could fall underneath the music fund, so it could be unaffected. But let's say it was $25,000 for an organ and we didn't have the music fund. That's a great example of something the board would consider because it's greater than that $19,000. Yeah.
Well, my question is, what if it's less? We've had some examples in the Sustainability Task Force where we wanted to spend $1,500 on something and somebody has just said, I'll pay for it as a restricted donation, I assume, and we've been able to spend that, but would that go away?
It would. We would need to ensure that we were spending within the operating budget. So meetings like this would be really important to talk to the equity team or talk to your sustainability task force and say, we want whatever, $3,000 worth of whatever it is. So it's about utilizing these democratic spaces that we already have to advocate for specific programs.
My concern with that is it could significantly slow down some really good momentum that's going on, and now I've got to go to the board and make my case, and then in some cases it sounds like the board would have to wait for a parish meeting, and 6 months goes by and nothing's happened and people's enthusiasm wanes. That's a concern for me.
Yeah, that's a potential con.
I had a question that occurred to me about donations for things that aren't in here. Like we got a donation to support intern ministers. Would those be covered under one of these categories? What's the foundation? Okay, that answers that. Okay, it's a foundation account, so it's fine. Thank you.
Anyone else? That's it? This has been helpful. What? We have one more? Is there going to be feedback from time to feedback, not just on the thing that was up there? Yeah. We're done? Okay, that was helpful. Thank you. This is exactly what we were talking about at our board meeting, and we just really wanted to put it out to you all and just get your feedback on that, because there's obviously, anytime you set something up where you're rigid, you know, and this is a policy, some things fall underneath that we wish wouldn't, but there are other things to consider that as to why we do need policy. So this was a good discussion. This is going to help us on the board. Want to wrap up?
I just want to remind everybody that everybody who's a member is always welcome to come to board meetings. We don't get a lot of people, and it would be great if we got more.
Right. So now is the time to provide feedback on the budget as a whole. If there's specific things you want to advocate, we can lean into what we were just talking about. Now's the time to speak your piece. Yes.
Budget questions, yes.
I was just wondering what the new atrium furnishings will be.
There we go. We don't know yet, but we are excited to create a task force that could help us make those decisions. I think we discussed starting that next year, and then they'll implement the year after. So we'll have all of the payments.
Is your question about the nature of the furnishings or about the funding of them? The funding comes out of the capital budget.
The nature.
Well, basically there are enhancements and the designs have already been created. And it would probably be helpful, I think, for the parish in general to be acquainted with what those enhancements look like. It's not just actually what's going to happen in the atrium auditorium. There are also complimentary hymnal racks and name tag racks and kiosks that'll go out in the commons area. But it's meant to finish off the auditorium as it was originally intended, but we didn't have the money to do some of that stuff. So Kubala Washatko has created all the designs, and those would be available to share with people if they're interested.
But again, if you're interested helping to fine-tune those plans, we'll be putting a request out in the next 8 months or so, and then we'll share that at an upcoming parish meeting.
I have a question. If there's an unexpected huge windfall in the, pledge income, what would the priorities be for distributing that?
I think that's a decision for the board to make, whether or not they would make a change mid-financial year. It's not something I've ever seen done. So chances are we would utilize that new data or that new information in order to make a change for the next fiscal year. I suppose the board would have it within their authority to try to propose a new budget mid-year and then get it approved by the parish again. Otherwise, I imagine we would save it until we can make a decision together.
I have a question about the changes in the staff positioning. Given that, as I understand it, we have 2 full-time positions that will now be 1.5 positions. 1 position. Mm-hmm. Okay, so is there going to be a reduction in, the expectation of what needs to be done?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
the position description will be totally redone by Kelly Crocker in collaboration with Janet Swanson and Jean Sears as well. So we've got great minds on it, and they will make sure that that's a position that's manageable, that's not going to be 2 positions smushed into one.
Well, because one other thought that I had, and maybe this is totally off the wall and for a different topic, but I'm just wondering if there's a way to more systematically use the volunteer talents of the community in a regular, organized way, like we do at the front desk, so that those are not paid people, but who have specific assignments and tasks on a regular basis, so that the work, it doesn't just continually expand with fewer hands.
I think that's a beautiful idea. You want to make a comment? I think Dorit wanted to speak to that in particular. There's no mic there, but...
That's a very important and very wide-ranging topic that has already started to be discussed. And please give us input, feedback on that. Yes.
Hi, I'm Robin Lowney Langton, and I'm a member of the FUS Equity Team. We're getting ready to put forward a proposal to the board that was originally slated for the April agenda, but will be on the May agenda. That's a proposal to engage with the YWCA for 3 years for a program called Creating Equitable Organizations. And the reason that we're putting that forward is that we want to make sure that we encode practices of equity in our hiring processes, whether it's for staff or through search committees that are appointed by the board. There was a report that was released last month by the UUA Commission on Institutional Change about hiring practices, and they specifically said informal systems tend to bias those who have power in existing power networks, which privilege those who have been in power. And so what we're proposing is to engage with them. It includes an equity assessment. It includes training that would be ongoing over 3 years that could include staff, board members, and congregation members. And the proposal to do the 3-year commitment is really so it would take us through our interim search process and to have a year with our new settled minister. It costs $30,000 over 3 years, and so we'd like to put forward a proposal that there be $10,000 in next year's budget to include the cost of that program if it's approved by the board.
Great. All right. Thank you. Yes.
This is a philosophical issue that's bothered me for decades, and it's of the why doesn't the Air Force have to hold a bake sale to buy a bomber, and the schools are fully funded? This has to do with our people. Why aren't our people fully funded? And then anything else we can raise above that goes for all the niceties. I just think it's more important that we take care of our people and not say, no, we didn't have enough left over this year, maybe next year. That's fine if you don't have to live it, but it isn't fine if you're making those people work for you.
Thank you. I think most of the board agrees with that. So the differences that we're looking at is paying mortgage and sort of keeping lights on and things. It's really, when we look at the budget, we've really cut out anything that's really elective and variable that we really could, while maintaining a certain level of services that we expect from a community. So it's a real tricky trade-off. I mean, the best answer to that, and we're trying to do this as well in our household, is try to pledge more. Unfortunately, the fact is, I think Monica brought up in January, we need about a little over $100,000 extra if we were to bring all of the wages up to the UUA standards. And that was, I think, detailed out as the $20 extra a month for 400 members or something to that effect. So that's the best answer. I mean, it really, as a board, it was a very interesting conversation. And even before this, as we were preparing the budget, trying to figure out how can we make this happen yet sustain everything around us. So it was a bit of a magic trick, and I really want to take my hat off to Monica and the rest of the team that took that $125,000 deficit and made that a plus, because that was hard work. So you've done a great job at this point, so thank you. But
there's work to be done, though.
Yes, absolutely.
Considering that statement that I don't know if it was 400 members or 400 pledging units, would each contribute $20 more a month, right? We could have met our goal with staff salaries.
Mm-hmm.
Did that happen?
Mm-mm. Although but the campaign isn't done yet, so
far it hasn't happened.
No, correct, yeah.
That is sort of the trick of the timing, where we create this budget for next year, and yet the pledging is not going to be done but 2 months down the road. So
I'd really like an opportunity for the congregation as a whole and all the services to hear a reminder that if we could get that $20 extra per person, that this is on the table right now, and that right now it's not going to happen unless something really changes. Because I feel like, for me, there's lots of people I know in CRE who aren't here today, and if they heard that was the direct impact of that $20 a month, I think you could see a change if it was framed that way.
thank you. Lorna.
And if you've already made your pledge, it's not too late to increase it.
We also do want to recognize the fact that in the last year we've had a capital campaign. We've been out there trying to raise a little bit extra here and there. We realize we keep trying to extract more. So there's also, we have to be careful that we don't overtax people at the same time. So it's a really trick. I mean, I tell you, it's a real big balancing act. Mm-hmm. So. Any other questions or comments, suggestions? This is all great. I can tell you, as a board member, it helps so much just to hear what you all are thinking, because we only want to do what's right and what's the best options. And I can tell you, we have a lot of choices that we have to make, that neither choice is the exact right choice. So we got to talk about splitting the baby here and there, and it's difficult. So, what? Yeah. No, well, and actually that was misapplied to what we're dealing with, because that's, sorry, sometimes my analogies aren't great. All right, any other questions or anything else before I take this off the rail further? We got one?
No, I think, Kelly, are we ready for you?
Are we done with questions? Oh, okay.
I think we might
Kelly,
be.
are you ready to? Yeah, well, I could. We can go many directions. I don't either. Sometimes I don't know either. It's a mystery to all of us.
We like that about you, though. You keep us on our toes. Our closing words from Peter Morales, former president of the UUA. It's called, "Our Work is Not Yet Done." O Spirit of life and love that lives within us and among us, be with us now. Help us take our history into our hearts as well as our minds. Open us so that we can feel our past live in us the joy, the disappointment, the passion, the pain, the hope. Let all of it live here in the core of our being. Let us be humble. Let us be honest. And let us also be inspired. More than anything, let us feel a spirit of deep compassion here living among us. O Spirit of life and love, help us to know, to truly know, that we are your people, bound together by our collective memory and, more importantly, by our shared aspirations. We are not perfect. We mess up. Sometimes we talk too much. Yet we are drawn together by what we love, by what we hold sacred, and by a vision of what we may yet create together. Finally, tender and gentle Spirit, guide us, inspire us, embolden us, for our work, we know, is not yet done. Thank you for being here today.